Kerry Morris, and I live up in Grand Boulevard. I'm interested in asking some questions about the 100 and 200 blocks up Lonsdale in relation to the rental units that are there. It would appear that through this program, developers will likely target those buildings. I'm privy to a report from Metro Vancouver that suggests that currently about 23% of those units are under attack, and that will increase to about 40% by 2021 as it relates to rental stock units. Given the fact that those units many of them are occupied by some of our older residents in the community, what are we doing in this process to price protect them against losing their home and being compelled to move into space they can't afford to move to?
Gary, can you answer that?
Yeah, I answered a similar question earlier. It's a grave concern for us in the city about what happens to that housing stock. So you mentioned the 1 and the 200 blocks. Those are primarily in this sort of brownish color here, and that tends to go up in central Lonsdale as well. So just off of Lonsdale itself is where we have most of our rental housing. In lower Lonsdale, it's actually pretty extensive out in this area as well. So this would be more like the 200 and 300 blocks. There's lots of rental housing out there, or older strata, which is also fairly affordable. We have limited tools that we get to use to control that. As I say, we can't zone for rental housing and impose that on people. What this plan does is in large part two things. The first thing is don't provide any more development potential on those lands. So it's currently 1.6 times the lot area, and it's staying there. In order to have a tool to influence new development that might happen, a density bonus from 1.6 to 2.6 would be available. That could be used to either replace the housing with new rental housing if it was old enough that it needed to come down, or potentially keep the building and upgrade it and transfer that extra density to a different location. And Ken mentioned that earlier, the density transfer idea, where you move density from one site to another, that might incentivize people to fix up an existing building. And that's happened at about the 1600 block of St. George's. They are not perfect tools. We're not armed with a perfect solution for these. We've got an old building stock. Typically those building owners are aged. A lot of them built them new, and they've been hanging on, and they're getting older, the buildings are getting older. We've been meeting with them. Emily Adden, the deputy director, has a new program that's come out through our engineering staff as well. There's an incentive program for them to do energy upgrades to their buildings now, which we've coordinated through TELUS, BC Hydro, yeah. And so little things like that we're trying to do to help them invest in the building. But the plan tries to not provide any additional pressure and provide some tools that might allow us to save or replace some of them. It's a major issue.
Kerry, another question?
We've heard, as you've just said, that you have limited tools, but I'm reminded of last Monday night where at 260 Esplanade, you were able to conduct a rezoning and negotiate through the process of price protection for nonprofits. If the city has it within its capacity to negotiate a price protection for nonprofits in relation to bonusing, why can it not use the same tools to protect existing people who will be displaced by a new development?
So just to give people some background on that, 260 West Esplanade is the orange roof commercial building, fronts first as well as Esplanade. In that project, council negotiated a mechanism to have some extra floor area built for commercial use. It's going to be a mixed-use building. So there's no residential displacement, but there's commercial displacement, and a bunch of the commercial displacement is nonprofit agencies that are in the existing building. So what council negotiated was to get, in addition to the base density, an extra 15,000 square feet that would be made available at below market rates to nonprofit. And the key word there is nonprofit. Through that mechanism, we're not aiding and abetting any individual business. We're aiding and abetting and supporting a nonprofit society, and that is all the difference. If it was a nonprofit society that was out there looking to do something, we do provide support for that. So we have provided below market lease rates, rents or leases for city-owned lands, for co-ops, For special needs housing, there's a group with mental issues or problems in Lower Lonsdale. We provided a very discounted lease for that. If it's nonprofit, that's the critical difference under the legislation.
Gary?
That's terrific. I'm not aware of any of the older residents that live in those buildings that aren't nonprofit. So why can't you lend your power to the people who are nonprofit who live there?
Well, the answer to that would simply be that we don't get to invent our powers. We're a creature of the provincial government. Under the Constitution, power is divided between the federal and provincial governments. Municipalities do not even exist. Under their powers, the provincial government chooses to create municipalities and give them as much authority as they choose to. They could give us a lot more. Vancouver has more than we do. But this is what they've chosen to give us, and we could do a lot more with better tools from the provincial government, there's no question, but we have to act in accordance with provincial legislation.
You have about a minute more, so Carrie.
The requirement for you to give a bonus or a density transfer doesn't exist. It's not a requirement, it's an option. It's at the discretion of council. If the developer won't offer some form of protection for those people that will be harmed and displaced by this, it is fully within council's authority to deprive that density bonus or transfer. So I would argue that it is fully within council's authority to protect those people. Thank you.